Hey everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mrhappy, aka Mrhappy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Man, I did not do good on any of my promises for too much content last week. I actually started recording some things, but I wasn't happy with them. I recorded a video on the PS02 thoughts, ended up just not wanting to release it. It seems like it needs to be redone from the ground up. Did make some progress on the tank versus, but man, I have just had a lot of fun just playing games the last couple weeks. You know, this has actually been happening to me more often. Whenever I find something I really want to dive into, I end up making less YouTube content because I'm just taking my spare time to enjoy myself, which is something I didn't do for years. So PSO2 I've been grinding like crazy. Finally took a little bit of a break from that for the Dauntless update, Call to the Void. And then Torchlight 3 I actually got to log into today. It was a little bit of trouble with the servers. I managed to play for like 3 hours and then I couldn't play for like 20-30 minutes because I was getting kicked out, so played more Dauntless. Pokemon comes out on Tuesday. Honestly, there's some stuff from the PC game show and the future game show like Chris Tale that I want to do just a quick little review video on and check out some of the other early access stuff that was available there. There's just so many things that now I'm looking forward, and I'm looking forward to them, like the PS5 event, Kana, Miles Morales. I didn't even get to finish the original Spider-Man game because it didn't do super well on stream. But the Miles Morales one, depending on how long it actually ends up being, because I'm super confused between the Sony executive and what Insomniac are actually saying. Kana's, I'm so down for that. Horizon, I didn't get to finish the original either because Breath of the Wild came out 3 days later, and honestly, I regret not finishing that and just watching somebody else play through the rest of the original Horizon. So, it's been pretty hype. But I gotta get back to making YouTube videos. As fun as it is, just doing what I'm doing, I gotta be responsible at the same time. So, we'll get done when we can get done. We'll see how it actually ends up going. So, before we get on to the Q&A, though, of course, gotta thank our patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so much for the support that has been coming through, even through some of these slower times on the YouTube channel. I know that I'm probably letting you down, but I gotta say my thanks, and hopefully I'm not letting you down too much. Also to our patrons of Darkness, Khuja Cross on Jenova, and Kurenai Oni. Thank you to the two of you. Now with that, we got some questions. Hopefully I've got some answers. Let's find out. Alright, there's the first several comments are just kind words about our introduction from last week. Of course, we're actually going to be including links to all the Black Lives Matter stuff and Pride Month stuff in all my videos for the foreseeable future. Pride Month stuff at least till the end of the month, but Black Lives Matter stuff for all the, at least for the foreseeable future, there will be resources for that in the descriptions of my videos because it just feels it's the right thing to do, and I want to do it. So with that, most of the first bunch of comments were on that. So this was the first question I actually saw, and it's actually a pretty simple one. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hello to you too, by the way. How would you feel about Warring Triad being the next ultimate? So I've had this discussion a lot with people. There's a very heated debate about what the next ultimate will actually be and what they could actually use for ultimates. Now, I'm feeling confident we won't see anything from the Stormblood era in an ultimate until after 6.0. They've kept, at least in the first 3 ultimates, stuff that was 2 expansions prior. But we only have 3 examples for that, so it's not 100% set in stone. The big thing for me is Warring Triad. Okay, that can actually be really cool, even without a final super ultimate form looking thing. Just all 3 of them as the final phase that goes really crazy. It doesn't seem like a bad idea. It would actually stand out from the other ultimates, but some people want God Kefka from Omega, which in Final Fantasy VI would make sense. In Final Fantasy XIV, it doesn't. They're completely unrelated, and it would kind of go against Ultimate's entire point, which is to tell a story in the most epic way possible. That's what these encounters, these super long encounters, are supposed to be doing, over-dramatizing an actual occurrence. And so throwing those two together would be new and different to Ultimates, and it would open up a whole lot of possibilities, but it goes against what we have as an example now. So for the Triad, if there was going to be a big bad, there's another boss that I have some problem with, but that's also open to some other ideas. Thornton's original goal was to actually absorb the Triad and use that energy to rule over as the God Primal and make sure there's no more dissent amongst the races. That was his entire goal initially. Now, this could, of course, they could re-dramatize it and act like he achieved that goal. It's not the original story, but it would still be a pretty cool finale if it actually panned out that way. But Thornton then also has, of course, one of the most obvious bosses as an option, Nidhogg, and a Dragon Song War style one, which for me would need Shinryu because Nidhogg's eyes tell a whole story that ends with Shinryu. So I'm pretty torn. I want the Warring Triad. I think it'll be the Warring Triad. Will it just be those three, or will they find a way to include Regula, or will they find a way to include Thornton, or will they just say fuck it and just decide to include Kefka? That's the question. And there's no way to say that. We can only base our guess based on what they've done so far. And that leads me to believe they'll just do the Triad and not include anyone else, but that I expect those bosses to appear on their own. If I were to follow another pattern, Ultima Weapon was the 2.0, the level 50 main scenario boss at the end of the initial patch. Thornton was the same for 3.0, so it makes the most sense that he would be the next one. But he on his own is super lame. He either needs the Warring Triad or needs Nidhogg. He on his own is lame. His knights are not interesting. Their story is not interesting. You can't tell a fun, interesting story with just the knights and Thornton. We'd just be getting Thornton Extreme 2.0, and I don't want that. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Capital S. Yo and ho, Happy. Why you gotta call me a ho? It's probably one of the many similar questions. PS5 reveal. Any thoughts? Yeah, I kind of opened with that, but I guess I could dive in a little bit more. I'm sure people want to know what I think of the PS5's design. I'm not gonna lie. I don't really care. I'm the only one who sees it, and if it plays my games, that's all that matters. So it looks like a router, and it's given us some wonderful memes. Good. I can't ask for much more on the internet in this day and age. I already mentioned Kena, Miles Morales being two of the big ones. Horizon West, of course, being another big one. And man, I'm sure if I go back through that reveal, I remember there only being a few games I wasn't super excited about. But now I'm having a hard time remembering what was in the PS5 reveal, what was in the PC Game Show reveal, and what was in the Future Game Show reveal. Because there was some overlap between all of those. So those were Chris Tale I already mentioned earlier. Faye Tactics, which I think was PC Game Show, showed up. Yeah, I'm having a hard time remembering which belonged to which. But oh, how did I forget the Demon Souls remake by Bluepoint? Oh man, I have been waiting for that. I was waiting for a PC version, but PS5 remake, I will take that. That's probably one of my biggest excitements. I will be getting a PS5. That goes without a doubt. It's going to happen. It's unavoidable. And there's other things I'm sure if I remembered them that I'd be excited about, but I think I've covered for the most part. Another one, hashtag Mr. Mondays. Oh, just so you know, there was a question that, like, I have an idea. I have to do a PSA for this occasionally. There was a question that was like, what do you think of this idea for a healer? I take those occasionally, but there are some times where it just ends up being like, the answer is either going to be like, yeah, sounds cool, or no, it doesn't. And it's not really interesting from a discussion topic for me. So I tend to avoid questions like that and occasionally take one just so you can see this kind of answer to it. But that is a question I just skipped over. I'm just letting you know that I did see it, individual who asked it, and that I just don't have, or there's not really a discussion to have around it. I can't say yes or no. I'm not someone who works on the game. I'm not someone, I can only understand how the game works, the mechanics of the game. So the idea of any healer, as long as it fits aesthetically and thematically in Final Fantasy, is a fine idea. So just wanted to throw that out there. But the question in front of us, hope you're having a great start to your week. I hope the same for you as well. What is one of your favorite video games from your childhood, and what drew you in? Feel free to throw out a few names. Oh God, how do I even start with this? I mean, one game that it was nice to see even just slightly mentioned, I think it was the PC Game Show, was Hexen on the N64. It's an id Software style game, you know, first person, but it had like classes and different weapons you could pick up. I found more intense puzzle aspects than like a Doom or a Quake, in my own opinion. So that's a big one that I still look at all the way back. When I think of id Software games, I look back at Hexen and I go, oh man, that's one that's in that style that I just never forgot, and I like it so much. Looking forward, I mean, I'm not going to even bother saying Final Fantasy. It's the answer everyone's expecting. It's obvious. Yeah, I've told the story a million times before, and my nose itches so much. What's another one? Jet Force Gemini on the N64 was a big one for me, too. I tried playing it years later, and I realized that, man, I had a tolerance for games with bad controls back then, because it did not feel good when I went back and played it later. But what else? Quest 64, which is a terrible game, but I'm way better at it now, so I can enjoy it a little bit more. A lot of N64 games, which is weird because DDR was a huge one for me. I played that for 7 years and even played it competitively. So you'd think I would mention that, but it just came to mind now because I forced myself to think about PlayStation, which I did also own. Then I think to the GameCube, like Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. I spent hundreds of hours in that game as a kid. Sega, listen to me, okay? I'm gonna hit you with the $1 million idea, okay? Just put a Chow Garden on a mobile phone. Do all the you can do all the normal mobile phone shenanigans, you know, the microtransactions, gotcha, whatever. I don't care. Make a damn Chow Garden for my phone. I spent so many hours on that as a kid in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. And you might be thinking, Happy, just buy Sonic Adventure 2 Battle and keep doing it. No, I want it on my damn phone so I can do it everywhere. Or just put chows in games again. Why did they stop doing that? Maybe it was too much effort? I love the chows. Put more chows in games. So that's another big one. Also, Netflix thinks that I'm going to like Hannibal. I don't think I will. So those are just to name a few. But those are some pretty big ones, and those are the reasons for those particular games. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps, hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. I hope the same for you. I know you expressed some complaints about the Nier raid. What would you do differently, and what could devs do for the second and third Nier raids to make them better? So here's the thing. When you do a collaboration event, you no doubt need to be pandering to the people who are looking forward to said collaboration. There needs to be fan service. There needs to be recognizable music. They nailed things like that. They nailed all the fan service elements. What is unfortunate about the Nier raid, because it is such a major part of the expansion, it is our 24-man. It is not something we will do in an hour or two, appreciate the effort that was put into it, notice a few details, and walk away from this non-canon event happening in Final Fantasy XIV as some sort of cross-promotional product. The problem with the Nier raid is it's not that. It is a main function, feature, and raid for Final Fantasy XIV, for the 24-man series, for the entire expansion. It needs to be integrated. It's been established as canon, and apparently in both Final Fantasy XIV and Nier, which surprises nobody, let's be honest. So what do you need to do? You need to make sure it properly appeals to Nier people. They hit that nail on the head. People wanted the booty, people wanted 2B, people wanted 9S. I know we got 2P, but it's close enough. People wanted to see all the, some of the signature enemies and their models and designs and the types of attacks with the balls flying everywhere. And they wanted to hear some of the OST in the back. They wanted to be able to collect it. Cool. But you're forgetting that it is a collaboration. It shouldn't just be Nier story taking place in Final Fantasy XIV's universe. And so far, they've made no effort to really establish that it has any relevance to the first or the history of it. And that's what they really need to do in part 2 and 3. That will determine how successful it is to me. Because they will nail the parts of it that are Nier-esque. They already have. I have no doubt they will continue to. They need to make it a proper collaboration. Don't just put a Nier item in Final Fantasy XIV. Make it part of the world. Make it part of the lore. Establish things that happened on the first, because this is happening on the first. But at the same time, because of the way that Nier works in Yoko Taro, it also has the burden of needing to be something that follows up on the existing lore of Nier. And I think with the second raid, we're going to see more of that, but I'm still not convinced that it's actually going to bring anything to Final Fantasy XIV other than fan service. And listen, Final Fantasy XIV is full of fan service, but there's fan service done well, like the Crystal Tower, like Ivalice, things that are integrated into the lore, answer long-standing questions, and open up new doors to learning about the world of Final Fantasy XIV and the different shards. Then you have Omega, which is the laziest for me. It's just like, here's a bunch of old Final Fantasy bosses. Good luck, I made this shit up in my head. There's like a story here or there that I heard from different dimensions and shards and worlds and planets and whatever, who cares? Omega's actual story was pretty tragic. But the way they used the raid was nothing more than eye candy and fan service. And I don't like Omega's raid for that. Nier needs to avoid that path. The first one didn't. Maybe the second and the third one will. And I actually hope it does. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. I like how almost everyone, I cross my arms and say, all right. And that's it. That's how we start. Hey, Hap. Hello. Appreciate the message at the beginning and hope you're doing well in this crazy year. I'm doing well, and thank you for the kind words. My question is about the tank adjustments this expansion, mostly about how Dark Knight and Warrior became incredibly similar. I'm curious if people are happy with the rework that Dark Knight received. With the exception of TBN, I think it plays like a budget warrior, both those jobs feeling terribly simple and slow. Gunbreaker is definitely the only fun tank and better emulates some components of Heavensward, Stormblood, Dark Knight. So I'm not a tank expert. My opinion, I would say, matters for nil here. I don't run it in hardcore content. I casually play Paladin sometimes, but Warrior, Dark Knight, I leveled them and probably won't touch them again until 6.0 when I level them again. So I'm going to give you my perspective. But my perspective, in my opinion, doesn't matter here because I'm not the target player. I'm not the target audience for these changes. I think that in their burst windows, they're too similar. I think outside of their burst windows, they vary enough to warrant them being considered different jobs. But I would like to see some more drastic changes. I think the bigger problem, and I think we talked about it last week, is Warrior's itemization. For a similar gameplay style to Dark Knight, at least again within the burst window, to have the itemization need to be drastically different for Warrior is just such a negative point against it. The direct hit element of its major damage probably needs to be changed, where you can boost the potency but take out the direct hit element so that you can actually wear the same gear across all of the tanks and it doesn't hurt them necessarily. As for the actual gameplay, I think Warrior and Dark Knight may need to go back to the drawing board a little bit, but I don't necessarily hate the way that they play. And I think there's room to have that style in there where they have that intense 10-second burst period that's about, you think about it, really only Gunbreaker doesn't have that. I mean, when you think about Fight or Flight, you go through a set rotation, you try to do the double up on the atonements. And but then you think about Request Cat and it's spell, finisher. And it's a little different. There's 2 abilities, but it's not that much different. And it has a little more flexibility because of the ability to heal. And yeah, you can use a single target AoE. You have the heal if you're really that desperate or you're soloing like I am on it sometime. But I think maybe they need to rethink the whole 10-second burst window for tanks when they're designing the jobs. It's just that it's such an important thing in Final Fantasy XIV that it's hard to move away from that. And it's probably why they have. It's why they have it the way that it is. It's because it's so difficult to move away from that mentality, from that design choice, because every other job in the game, non-tank, also has those incredibly short burst windows that everyone tries to stack up and deal damage exponentially in. So I think maybe the way they achieve their damage in that 10 seconds, they might want to revisit on tanks in particular, but they're probably going to have that similar feel in that specific time frame. And I wouldn't be surprised to see even Gunbreaker move more towards that 10-second window in future iterations of it. Next one, I deliberately changed my intro. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Habs, how you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Thanks for answering my question last week. Got a few Blue Mage questions for you this week. I don't remember last week's questions, but you're welcome. When the blue level cap goes up to 70, we can expect to have some or all of the level 70 EX trials and Omega Savage raids and other rewards. Are there any problems you can foresee tackling these fights as 8 blue mages? Any mechanics that could give us problems? Hello World is going to be a nightmare in Omega. Midgard-Sormer is going to be hilarious, but it all depends on if they make changes to Diamondback. Diamondback is really the number one thing that makes me go, is that actually going to be a problem, or is it not? Because Diamondback lets us cheese so much in the Alexander raids, and it's a question of what they're going to let us get away with in Omega. But Hello World is the number one thing that comes to mind. I noticed that you did not mention Ultimate, though. Ultimate is a whole different story. With the toolkit they have right now, Bahamut would be possible at level 70. But Ultimate Weapon would not, because there is no way they can deal with the forced limit break sections. Like, they don't have a DPS limit break equivalent. They don't have an AoE DPS limit break equivalent. They don't have a healer LB equivalent. And no, White Wind does not count. They would be brought down to 2 HP anyway. And I've actually been in a group that's healed to full without healer LB there. And it doesn't cleanse the Doom. You specifically need healer LB3 to cleanse the Doom. So unless they give them like a new limit break-esque system for level 70, which is possible, only Bahamut of the 2 ultimates would be possible. And I wouldn't even hate that, but man, I need to see a deep dungeon for Blue Mage, man. It just doesn't make any sense to not have it. Make it so you have to collect the spells inside the deep dungeon. Somebody suggested that to me. I don't know who. And I was like, that is such a good idea. Do that, please. Please. Are there any spells you think Blue Mage needs? Are there any spells you really want to see? No, I can't think of anything they need other than something to emulate limit breaks. That's really the only thing they need. Maybe a more reliable tank cooldown that's not Diamondback, because their other ones are kind of iffy. And maybe like a heal over time for the healer one. But other than that, man, they've got so many DPS spells. They have so many spells in general. But we know that they've got quite a few spells still on the way. Finally, is it worth starting to try to find a group for A8 Savage, A12 Savage, Blue Mage now, or do you think it'd be worth waiting for the next wave? The sooner you can get it done, the better, because when the next wave comes out, yes, odds are the group will want to do the old stuff too, because they won't have the Blue Justice title, and it'll be the new hotness at the moment. But they also probably want to focus on the new stuff, and there's likely to be some fall off going into the old content again. So the sooner you can find a group for that, the better, in my opinion. All right, next one. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I just cleared the normal modes of E5 through 8 after buying crafted gear to run them. After completing them, I wanted to spend my tokens and noticed it was 480 gear, but it wasn't pentameldable. Brings me to the question of what's the point of having normal mode gear gated if you can buy equivalent set of gear for around 1 million gil? Simple, not everyone wants to buy gear. Most people will progress through picking up tomestones or picking up dungeon loot. Not everyone has 1 million gil or wants to spend the 1 million gil on just grabbing a set of armor. As soon as you've done that, you're just clearing the normal mode raids to get access to Savage, which is not all that abnormal. It's actually what we do on launch day when we're trying to progress from normal to Savage anyway. When it comes to this in particular, you just took a different path. So for you, the gear, maybe you get it for an alternate class, which is another popular thing people do with those 480 tokens, so they don't have to buy crafted gear for another job or for another role or anything like that. But for you, there was no point. You just needed to clear it to get to Savage or to the next tier for Eden when E9 comes out, and you're already set. So you're good to go. I saw something in this that makes me really curious what the actual question is, because I just glanced through and I saw one word, and I'm like, all right. Let's see how this goes. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hello, how you doing? First time asking, but have been watching for years. Thank you. Thank you for watching, and thank you for asking, finally. I have a question about the next Eureka. Yeah, that was the word. Bajda. Realistically, though, I can already see another word that has me interested. Really wanted your opinion. I'm a big fan of OG 11, played it for years, loved it. How would you feel if the new Eureka was more similar to campaign battles? Campaign battles, personally, one of my favorite things from 11. The OP boss coming in, slaughtering half the people. Considering Eureka doesn't really fall in line. So I can give you my opinion on campaign, but then I can give you my opinion on how I think Bajda will actually play out. I don't like the majority of Final Fantasy XI content, structurally speaking. Campaign, in my opinion, was just a clusterfuck. It's kind of like Besiege. People say, oh, I loved Besiege. And I was like, how? It was literally it not being able to hold enough of the players, it not loading anything on the screen, dying to invisible enemies, and just trying to get any sort of level of participation. Campaign, on the other hand, was people trying to level solo most of the time, so that's why they would get slaughtered. And the few times they didn't, if there was any place where there were bosses like you've just described, most of the time people just abandoned them. Rarely did you ever have groups actually form and try to defend. They're just like, fuck that. I'm not going to do that. So it was one of those things that structurally sounds okay on paper. Oh, there's forts that you can defend and attack. And, every week there's, depending on the tally, the conquest tally, people will, have more control or less control of certain areas. And you need control of certain areas to access certain content. It ended up, I feel like, really just not mattering at all. Like, it just wasn't exciting. It just wasn't, in my opinion. And that's around the time I quit 11 the first time. So you can probably tell why I was kind of just done with Final Fantasy XI's content structure around the time campaigns came out. I can play 11 now, and campaign, quite frankly, the thing I look forward to least every month, because you have to do it for silver vouchers, because it's just, now that we're even more OP, it's the opposite problem with it. Other people just going through and murdering it and then needing to, get enough credit for 5,000 tokens. I've never liked campaign. That's all it really comes down to. As for how I think Bajda will play out, like that, but Final Fantasy 14-ified. I think with it being an active battlefield between us and the Garleans, it 100% has room for take this fort, defend this location. And you know what? That still ultimately comes down to feeling like Fates, but I have a feeling it'll be less. Some of it will be timed, some of it will be forced, some of it will require specific conditions in order to actually make it occur. So the actual ability to make certain things happen around the map will be a little less in the player's control, but eventually we'll figure out a rhythm. People will move through it, take timers of everything, and I think it'll be okay. I think I ended up liking Eureka other than Pagos, so I have a feeling I'll like this more just because they've already taken some feedback and made it, conditioned it a little bit more. And I'm hoping they've learned their lesson about what is actually available on the map and how much control players have in regards to accessing that content. So that's how I think it'll pan out, though. Kind of similar to what you're suggesting here, just all condensed onto one map. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Good day, Mr. Happy. Good day to you. To make up for me asking a cardinal sin question, yeah, you asked me, what do you think? Yeah, those are rough. You can tell from the one above this, it doesn't always work. It doesn't always work out poorly, because that one actually had a lot of context about what it would essentially boil down to. What do you think the next Eureka will be like? The next boss show will be like? So there's actually like room for a discussion. So. But you have not committed a cardinal sin this week. You have instead given me a 24-man Phantom Train mount become mandatory part of any hunt train. And Eureka. My question is, if you were to recommend a melee DPS to someone who has never played a DPS class before, which class would it be? That's actually kind of tough, because Rogue is super boring until 50. Until 40, really. But 50 is where it starts to get a lot better. Pugilist is a lot of fun early, but I'm not a super big fan of level 80 Monk, so I feel like I'm setting them on the wrong path. Lancer is better than it was before. It still picks up after level 30, but it's definitely more fun than Rogue is early on, but not by very much. And Samurai can't play till 50, so it comes with that advantage of just being able to start at 50, making it a pretty good option. But I'm not a super big fan of Samurai either this expansion, so I'd say probably either Samurai, because you start at 50, which can actually be a little overwhelming to someone who's never played a DPS, but at the very least you aren't starting from the most boring levels of 1. If you want to start from 1 though, Pugilist probably, because at least the movement, the flank rear movement, is genuinely more exciting than the other classes that are available. So I'll go with Pugilist. Oh, there's a lot of text on this one. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Hello, Haps. How are you doing? Doing all right, thank you. Long-time viewer since I started playing Mid-Stormblood, your guides, and I can never pronounce this person's name. Dioko. Help me figure out which class to play, Black Mage and Dark Knight. Unpopular opinion, Miss Dark Art spam. You're right, unpopular. I have 2 questions and a sort of opinion question. Okay, we'll see. We'll see if it's a cardinal sin or not. I recently started playing Monk in the most recent EX trials, and I had fun with it. Just want to know what's wrong with it. I've seen Drax's insight and lack of identity, and you said Monk has reached its peak during Heavensward. It's been downhill, so I want to know. I mean, you kind of just answered it already. It's just been more of the same, while they keep adding in like hyper-conditional skills. Sometimes they have these like really brilliant ideas, like they did with the double tornado kick, and then they say, no, we didn't mean that. And they get rid of it. They just don't know. It seems like they hit a peak with it and they went, what do we do now without ruining that? And they've just not been able to do it. It keeps coming back to the exact same rotation. The one big thing that it does now is you can do a double True Strike rotation, where you, instead of doing True Strike, Twin Snakes, in between combos, you do 2 True Strikes and a Twin Snakes. But if you screw that up even a little bit, it is a huge loss and barely even worth going for in the first place. So that's a problem all of its own. And it just feels like it doesn't know where to go, and it needs room to grow and become exciting again. And I don't think it is. I think it's exciting for people who haven't been playing it for years, maybe. Not for me. And maybe that's my problem and not the game's and not anyone else's. That's a fair opinion as well. What made it perfect? Just, it had everything it needed to perform. And now it's got a bunch of things on top of that. And it's just tacked on. It has gotten some things that are crazy good. Obviously, this expansion with the changes to Riddle of Earth and what's the name of the skill that the roll action that makes you not have any positionals, whatever that one's called. You have so much time where you don't even care about positionals, which then goes against its entire identity in the first place. So it's at the same time, it's great from like a functional standpoint, but it's at the same time like so counterintuitive to the whole point of the job of having to swap between the positions. It's so conflicting, it's so confusing, but it's so simple and easy to play and does really good DPS that who knows if it'll change. But it was perfect before. Now it's just got a bunch of shit added on. That's all there is to it. So that Black Mages feels it's reached its peak and don't know what could be added. Thought about getting a 3rd stack of Polyglot and adding a spell that consumes all 3. Yeah, but that doesn't change anything. And also, that actually would hurt it more, because you want those stacks of Polyglot for your instant casts on your Xenoglossy for movement. That would, in fact, harm it and send it in the opposite direction, in my opinion. But again, it's not changing anything. It's just, it's doing the same thing where it just keeps adding something on, and they still have to do more to it than that. And I'm afraid they're going to take Black Mage. It's at its peak right now. Maybe, but is it going to plateau and stay at that really good spot? Or is it going to dip? Because I don't think it goes up anymore. I don't know how it could, but maybe they do. I don't know. I can't help but feel like making them less mobile by giving them this option, I don't think is in any way going to help them. The only thing I can imagine is an ability that gives you an instant stack of Polyglot. Or that's it. That's all I got. That's it. Another movement tool. Because honestly, if I don't want them to be any less mobile than they are now. And then right now, it's perfect. It's beautiful. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey Haps, hello. What is your MMO experience before 14 that isn't 11? I came to 14 from RuneScape 3 and the learning curve switching over, positioning on the screen, clicking on skills instead of learning keybinds. Oh, and had a learning curve. Okay. Well, some bad habits you had to break. I didn't have any bad habits coming over from other things. 11 made me a bad-habited individual in the first place, and I eventually took a year away from MMOs to forget all that when I quit during Wings of the Goddess, because I had this like superiority complex that I can't stand when other people have with 11. It's one thing to say you've liked 11. It's one thing to say that you kind of like that design choice, but there are people who literally shit on other people for not agreeing with them about 11's design choice. And it's those, I can't stand those people in gaming altogether. They're unbearable as individuals, and I want them to have nothing to do with my life. And Final Fantasy 11 is no different when people act that way. Like it, enjoy it, respect it, but don't act like it was this like pedestal that stood above everything else, when I could name plenty of things that were probably not great about it or that frustrated people about it. So when I took that year away, all that went away. I didn't have that baggage of thinking, oh, this was the greatest thing. If it's not like this, it's terrible. So I shed all that. I had played WoW. I had played a bunch of free-to-play MMOs, Hero Online, Silk Road Online, Granado, Espada. Don't forget, I played 1.0 before playing 2.0. I also played a bunch of other free-to-play stuff. I played RO. I played RO2. I played, God, I don't even remember everything that I've played in all the years that I played Rift. I played, well, WildStar actually came out after Final Fantasy 14, if I recall. I think it was like 2014, question mark. So, I don't know. I'd gone to friends' houses and briefly played Ultima Online, but like I wouldn't say I played it. I just take every MMO. I have a few habits that hurt me, that I need to break every time I play it, but I don't have like big ones that carry over perpetually. So I've managed to avoid all that, thankfully. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. What's good, Haps? I'm doing good. You doing good? I'm doing good. It's pretty long-winded. No, it's not. Look at this. This is all it is. This isn't long-winded. Look at this. I saw your Galka in Monarchland. You mean peak physical form male Viera. Anyway, a couple weeks back, and inadvertently inspired me to ask my first question. Well, let's see what it is. Are there any wacky systems you'd like to see as content in 14? Talking about stuff like pankration and monstrosity. Collectible trusts could fall into that category as well. Pretty burnt out on 14 and getting back into 11, so I've been messing around with some of the stranger sides of the game while killing time for the next in-game day. Pankration boiled down to one or two like really OP combinations that just... it became so uninteresting so quickly once people had figured out like the slime build, or there was, I actually can't even remember most of them, but there was like the elemental build, the slime build, where you could just make unkillable gods that would just chip away at the enemy, and that's all there really was to it. What else was there? Yeah, monstrosity, I don't care for it all. You know what, I think I've had my fill with Lords of Verminion, so no. I think you can look at the basic, like, you know, combat gameplay and look at like interesting ways to create different experiences. Obviously Eureka with the Logos actions was a major boon to Final Fantasy 14 at the time. It was very different, and it was just this thing that let you break the game in ways you never thought they'd let you, and that kind of freedom was fun for that limited experience, because if it had carried over into other things, it would have been a disaster. So taking that idea and creating content where you're just kind of allowed to go nuts, but you still have this core content structure, I think is really important. Again, I think if they ever do like 4-man, like ultimate dungeons and stuff like that, I think they need to follow suit. They need to make things for it specifically that let you go way beyond what a normal 4-man group is allowed to do in the first place. You know, let you find some broken combinations of things that are specifically tailored to that content, and then you don't have to worry about, you know, more of the onus being on the healer or not being able to create interesting enough boss mechanics. You know, you don't have to go too crazy with it when you have stuff like that. You just need to create, you know, again, maybe defeat conditions like in Baldesion Arsenal, or things things like that. We mentioned earlier, Blue Mage getting its own version of a deep dungeon where you start with one spell, Water Cannon, and you have to learn the spells inside of there while still having some other familiar deep dungeon elements. You can do things like that still break the conventions but very much fit in Final Fantasy XIV. And I think that in itself would be a good enough way to break things up in Final Fantasy XIV a little bit. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hi, Haps. Hope all is well during your year. Dumpster Fire 2020. It's doing as good as it can. So the question is, with all the better options for Disciples of Hand and Land, the Firmament, the Beast Tribes, custom deliveries, roulettes, trusts, and alt jobs, do you think that leave quests will eventually go away? I think it's on the cusp. I think they might keep it just for crafters and gatherers like they have been. Super low effort for them to do on crafters and gatherers in particular. And they'd have to get rid of a lot of achievements if they did that, but they've all but phased them out without officially phasing them out anyway. Kind of like they have with classes over the years. It's just one of those systems that lingers and kind of exists, but we don't have to acknowledge it too deeply. So I'm okay with that. I have no problems with it working out that way. It's as far as I'm concerned, it's gone to me. That's all that really matters. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. First time asking, hello to you too. Also new subscriber and new to 14. Hope you're doing good. See, you got to it at the end. Hope you're doing good as well. You may have covered this in previous videos. Figured I'd give it a shot to ask anyway. All right. In your opinion, what's the best way to close the gap from 70 to 80? So fortunately, we have a few options here. Doing dungeons, obviously. Most obvious options. Trusts if you don't have the patience or the time to wait in a queue on like a DPS job or something. You have the Fates. I've leveled multiple jobs to 80 on Fates. Slower, but you can work on those Fate Stone grinds, and you can actually sell some of the items for like around maybe 900 to 1,000 gil a piece, but you get like, 6 of them per time you complete a Fate, so it adds up at least somewhat reasonably. You also have Beast Tribe dailies. You have the Pixies in particular. That's going to work for your Disciples of War and Magic, and then you have Disciples of Land with the Keeker, and it will have Disciples of Hand with the Dwarfs in 5.3. You also have your daily roulettes. That's another obvious one. And all of that should really keep you covered. You shouldn't need anything other. There are daily hunts also that you could be doing, and the ones on the board. And you just do your roulettes every day. You should walk away with a level and a half at least, maybe even a little bit more. So just do that. What do you think Square Enix could do to rework Blue Mage? I don't hate the question, which you presumed I would, but it doesn't matter what I think they would do because it's not going to change. It's a limited job and it's not going anywhere in that capacity. So, that's where it is. Thank you for the kind words here at the end. I'm glad people were receptive to the start of the video last week because, it matters to me. I think that's the best way to put it. Matters to me. All right, hashtag Mondays with Mr. Dot, and that's it. That's the end of the hashtag. Happy, hi, dude. Good to see things are good, and if they're not, let's sue them and get pay dirt. I don't want dirt. That doesn't sound fun. Second time asker, so I have a mega steak. Oh, I had a nice steak the other day. 2 simple questions. A few episodes back on State of the Realm, you mentioned how you did LAN parties, or back in those days, computer parties. No, LAN parties still will. Yeah, I guess technically because we weren't always... LAN parties still works. 'Cause we weren't always playing the same game, so we weren't landing it up. We were just there. Is there a reason you guys had a house where you put your PCs at? Because it sounds like you and your friends just had some random house. No, one of my friends basically... He and his brother had the house themselves all the time. And they were responsible for taking care of it. They had to clean it. They had to take care of the pets and all that. So they just had it available to them all the time. And whenever the parents would come home, they were just cool with them having a ton of people over. It was just a really low-stress environment, and a lot of us who went there at least attempted to keep the place clean with the number of people who came through. Didn't always work, but I put in my effort. I walked the dog a bunch and cleaned up after beer nights or anything like that. But sometimes when we were just trying to get away from drinking, or we were like thinking about a game that we were like playing at the time, we just go upstairs and log in real quick and check to see if there was anything we could be doing. And it was just, we would just leave all our PCs there. Some of us would sleep there for like days and nights on end, and it was a lot of fun. We just had to make sure we brought the proper hygiene stuff with us. And so many of us, like 4 or 5, 6 of us, would just sleep there. We said it was basically like a frat house, specifically in our hometown. And it was some of the best years of my life coming out of that, even if I did have some not so good experiences as well, but the good always comes with the bad, and you gotta look back on those good times and at least enjoy them for what they were. I wouldn't change most of those times that I had there, except maybe the time I dislocated my arm. Yeah, that time wasn't super great, but it is what it is. Why do you wear a beanie? Because my hair is a disaster right now. My hair is like this big. I look like, if you watch the recent State of the Realm, you can see me without my beanie on very briefly. One with Frosty. It's just because my hair is a fucking mess because I can't get it cut anywhere. And if I buzz it myself, it's going to come up all fucked up because my buzzer cannot handle the thickness of my hair. I've tried before, trust me, and I had to go to a barber even after buzzing my head because it was just all levels of fucked up. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Greetings from the UK. Hello. Hope everything is going okay. Sorry to hear NA Fan Fest but canceled. Hopefully be rescheduled. If not, you can get across to London. Listen, I'm not even thinking about flying right now. I am just thinking about staying safe, staying healthy, and that's all we need to make sure that we're doing right now. Anyway, on to my question. Recently joined a casual static to work on E5. We put in 12 to 14 hours, finally at a stage where we're consistently hitting Enrage. Grats. However, I'm looking for ways to improve my performance. But you started playing as Dancer. Get it? Performance? Never mind. How to decently indulge OGCD timings, feather usage. However, I changed to Monk since we only had one melee. I'm enjoying it, but always seem to miss OGCDs like Elixir Field and Shoulder Tackle as playing on PS4. They don't appear on my main hotbar. I never make use of TK or SSS. You won't. Tornado Kick at the very end of the fight. At 0.1%, you'll use Tornado Kick, pretty much. At 0.2%. What is the best way to make sure I don't miss or misuse these? So here's the thing. I'm not super familiar with how customizable the PS4 experience is. On PC, you can use the cross hotbar, but you can also set up hotbars alongside of it to either have skills that you will use maybe with the mouse or with mouse mode, or you can just use extra hotbars in order to track things that you're not sure of what the cooldowns are. The only other suggestion I would make on that front is to just casually, like between GCDs, check those and make sure that you're keeping them on cooldown. Like if you're not doing an OGCD, just quickly like tap one of the like shoulder buttons or whatever combination you have for your OGCDs and see how long before they're available again, just to make yourself cognizant of it. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Edit. I forgot to say hello. See? Somebody knows you can edit. Yeah, that's what I like to see. Hello to you too. The devs seem to try and add little basic updates to what is possible with each expansion. Flight being added, swimming, sprinting for Stormblood, and TP removal for Shadowbringers. For the next expansion, what would you like to see them add or change? Personally, I'd like to see some kind of out-of-battle movement update, maybe changing how jumping works or add walls you can jump up for the sake of exploration, fun, when you don't always need to just fly up using your mount. Sometimes you just run into those little hills you just need to go around. It can be annoying. Being able to navigate up there without doing so would be pretty neat. I don't think they would change anything on that regard, especially adding wall jumping, because that opens up... They'd have to be adding content that made sense for wall jumping, and since you can fly... I don't know that that would have the right longevity unless they were really planning some intense jump puzzles like Mario Odyssey Darker Side level jump puzzles, which some people may or may not be okay. And they wouldn't rework the momentum of a character. Like you'd still probably start and stop immediately. And for wall jumping, I feel like you need some degree of momentum in order to really make it feel like it's making sense. Otherwise, it just kind of feels stiff. I don't think they need to do anything like that, but they're always doing quality of life updates to little things that I'm not even thinking about at any given point in time. Crafting and gathering updates were really big. I experienced those for the first time finally in the recent weeks when I was doing the crafting and gathering element of our restart series. And yeah, I don't know. Like that's tough because there's nothing I would think of. I just think about the gameplay, the content, the combat, and then these things always come as like, whoa, I didn't even think of that. And so, I don't know. I actually don't have an answer for it because there's too many little things it could be. And not enough things that I want to narrow down saying that. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hello to you too, by the way. Do you think devs will ever put up more gates for low-level characters? With easy story instances letting people choose their difficulties becoming easier for people with very little skill to get carried into the later game content. Do you think they could have required DPS checks or something to have people to get into extremes and savages? It seems unfair that a player does half the combo to bring down the other players. Well, I mean, to be fair, fortunately in Savage you can curate your own parties. Everyone does. And if you see a player playing at that level, you can choose to remove them. You don't have to be a dick about it. You can just be like, this isn't going to work, or I'm watching your rotation. Like, there are ways because people are afraid to do stuff like that. It's like, oh, they're going to ban me. No, there are ways to tell someone they're underperforming without getting banned, but most people won't opt into that. They just want to call people shit heaps and then hope that, and then be like, oh, I was just telling him his DPS was bad. And I was like, no. I guarantee you were being a royal dick when you told them that, and it is not nearly the way that you claim it is, because I sincerely doubt it is based on the way you're reacting about it now. So don't get me wrong. I would like if they did stuff like this, force you to beat something like a Stone Sky Sea. But there's so many things. There's so many elements that go into determining the quality of the player. I don't think they could reasonably force you to check them all. So ultimately, it comes down to this. If you're doing something like high-tier content like Savage Extremes, and a player isn't playing up to par, you don't even have to explain yourself. You are the party leader. If someone is dying constantly or not contributing a lot, you can remove them. You don't have to fear being banned. You just have to remove them. That's it. Or remove yourself from the situation, and that's it. And yes, it can be frustrating to know somebody's not putting in the effort, or maybe they're new and they aren't picking it up as quickly as you want. You know, you got to also consider those levels of consideration when it comes to other players and their skill levels. But no, I don't think they're ever going to put up more gates for characters who aren't level 80. If you are level 80 and you still don't know what a stack marker looks like, you haven't been paying attention, and it doesn't matter what the game did. You never cared to pay attention on the way up. If you've reached level 80 and you still don't know that the glowing outlines around a button means that it's a combo, maybe you didn't play something that had a combo, but if you're level 80, I'd like to presume you did. If you're level 80 and you don't understand how material works, fortunately, Google can answer that question. You shouldn't just run through the game without ever looking at the system because you, quote, don't know how it works. There's so many answers to these things that, to me, feel like common sense, but people are either lazy, don't care, or just are oblivious, and a combination of one of the first two. So no, they don't need to add more gates, but I just wish people would take responsibility for themselves more often, because they don't. And that's actually going to be the last question that I pull up on screen. We've been doing these lightning rounds here at the end, because sometimes there's like repeat questions or things that I don't have great answers for. I already acknowledged that one earlier that I said I didn't really have much to add to it. Like there was actually 2 people that asked about ideas for healers, and again, I just don't have too much to add to that conversation, because it's literally either going to be a yeah, sounds good, or nah, I don't like it. It's not a discussion, so it's hard for me to really get too invested in it. What was another one that I saw that was that I thought needed answering? Where is it? I know I saw a few of them here. Let's see. No. Yeah, there's the new healing one again. You were talking about the point of Monk, the point where the job is most satisfying to play, easy to pick up. Oh, that question I read, I didn't understand what the actual question was. So, the one about Samurai and the point of it, and I was like, I didn't even understand what it was. There was a lore-based question about Minfilia, and without reading the question aloud, because, you know, slight spoilers, even though it's so old, it really shouldn't matter. We're good. I think you'll understand what I mean there. We're good at this point, you know? I think there's a question 5.1 that lets you know we're good. Then there's one about Square Enix's business, like how well 14 does to affect the game's development roadmap. I mean, how well something is doing always matters to a business, but 14 is doing well, so I'd assume that will mean that it keeps being updated at a pretty regular pace. Is there another one here? Is this one? What are your thoughts on the next Blue Mage update? Who knows? I was hoping it would be 5.3. It doesn't feel like it's going to be the case. What is this one? How would you feel about a Beast Tamer job? Yeah, again, I can't really add anything to that conversation. There is an apartments question here that I just missed outright. If they could make different size apartments, they mentioned the possibility of doing that at some point, but we haven't seen anything, and I would approve of the ability to upgrade the size of our apartment, even if it's through request or just through additional money. I'm okay with that idea. And then the last one's a little bit of spoilers. Like, do you ever think we'll work with an Ascian? I mean, we have in small doses, but, I mean, there's some characters we don't really know everything about, so I'm waiting to find out what the point of some of the characters that have shown in recent times are really, what they're really up to, and if maybe our goals are aligned in some way. Then we had, I could have swore there's at least one more here that I thought of that I said that I was going to grab, and I don't see it. You ever revisit a discussion about races? I don't think there's any discussion to really have about that, because I don't really care about aesthetics, cosmetics, or anything like that in the game. So my girlfriend made my character, so I play it. That's all it really is to me. So I don't really have much of a discussion about that. And I think that's it. I think those are all the questions that I wanted to grab real quick and at least acknowledge here at the end. But thank you, everyone, for your questions on this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. It is now 3:17 p.m. I haven't eaten since 6 in the morning, and I think I'm going to go grab something real quick before the Gone with the Wind emergency quest starts in PSO2. I need my Rising 2 badges, and that's where they all are. So thanks, everyone, for hanging out. Thanks, everyone, for watching this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Be sure to ask your questions in the comment section of the video for next week. And we do have another State of the Realm this week, another podcast highlight month. We're doing our best to make sure we get a podcast out to you guys every week, despite everything that's going on and the lack of content in 14. We'll be doing our best for you guys. But thank you for watching. I'll see all of you in the next episode. Stay safe, stay hygiene. And until then, take care.